when he's dead for 7 minutes, he sees his father, who he watched die when he was a kid, and he can't deny the experience, and better yet, he doesn't want to. And it's this whole story about how do you find a place where you find this balance between remaining a rational skeptic and yet being okay with belief without having faith.
Hey, everybody, and welcome. I am Morgan Gist McDonald, founder, CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today the author of a brand new book, Finding a Light in a Room with No Walls, author Matteo Lamb. Thanks for being here, Matteo.
Thank you. Lam is actually the correct pronunciation.
Lam, the German. We were just talking about how it's like Italian plus German family.
That's the German. But yeah, thank you, Morgan. It's nice to be with you.
Well, it's great to have you because you are launching this incredible book that is called Finding a Light in a Room with No Walls. And it's got some dark side and some light side and some characters that people are going to be fascinated to meet. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and who we get to meet in the book?
Well, the first character you're going to meet is Marc Diodato, who's the main character, and you're going to find him in a pretty bad place. I've always liked the idea that the most unlikely people can be the sources of enlightenment and wisdom, and I crafted this character who he's hard to like in the beginning. You know, he's jaded, he's disgruntled, and then you find out through the course of the story why, because he's got a really, really messed up history. And you know, he becomes very successful. He's estranged from his mother, and then he gets this wacky diagnosis that really sends him into a tailspin, and he just completely spirals out of control. And finally, you know, when you find in the very opening scene in the book, he tries to kill himself. And then, you know, you find up later that he wakes up in the hospital and he has a near-death experience, and he's one of these like hardcore atheist types who has to like say, he has to come to terms with this possibility, like, what if I hate the idea of God. I hate the idea of religion. My mother was a religious fanatic and a lunatic, and you'll meet Elaine, and Elaine's a handful in the story. You know, Elaine is a combination of people I know and probably Sharon Stone from Casino, like blended together, you know, and so, you know, he's got like all of these issues that are all like bound up into this. But, you know, when he's dead for 7 minutes, he sees his father, who he watched die when he was a kid, and he can't deny the experience, and better yet, he doesn't want to. And it's this whole story about how do you find a place where you find this balance between remaining a rational skeptic and yet being okay with belief without having faith. And it really goes, there's this whole philosophical component to Marc, because Marc obviously goes through this evolution in the story. And, you know, and it highlights a lot of issues of how there are just unspoken things that are good, that don't need explanations, like the love of a spouse, the love of a child, you know, having a good meal with someone who is one of your people, and enjoying beauty, and all of those non-verbal things. And you know, that's, I think, the underlying theme of the story, because like I've got journals and journals and journals in my attic of philosophy that I've written over the years. And you know, I was raised Catholic. I went through this whole cycle of trying different worldviews and all these different things. And the only thing that kind of worked for me was rational skepticism. But believing in nothing made me miserable. And it didn't work for me. So I wrote this book to kind of work this out. I wanted to work it out. And I actually did through the story, because my favorite story are they kind of hit two criteria. They're compelling, but they also have a point. There's also a reason why the story is being told. So I kind of thought that I had to meet both of those things when I wrote this. So you're going to meet Marc, you're going to meet Giancarlo, who is the noble friend that he makes in Italy, who's this kid who works as a waiter at a restaurant that he eats at lunch at every day. You're going to meet his brother Gabe, who spends his life as an underachiever but a good father and a caregiver to his crazy mother. You're going to meet Hannah, who's Mark's wife, there's a lot of bad things that go down between those two. And then you'll meet other characters in Italy, like Giovanna, who's probably one of my favorite characters in the story. She's great. And there's also characters that are based on my cousins when you go down to southern Italy. Like, I have family over there, so there are scenes in there that are really like based on real people. There's a scene with the mayor of San Pietro Tanagro, which is where his father's from, where my family's from, and the mayor of the town is my cousin Piera. And she lost the election in real life, but I told her, I said, listen, I made you win in the book. So I had fun with things like that. And so, it's my life mixed up and churned around in a blender, with a lot of my own personal experiences in fictional narratives. And I'm all the characters and I'm none of them at the same time. Yeah. And that's how the story came to me. And I think I wrote this book for people like me who, we grow up with certain upbringings, we have certain ideas kind of thrust upon us by our culture, by our families, but something just doesn't click, and there's nothing for us in the world. There's no way to like find a way to view the world in a way where you can embrace mystery but still remain logical. When you have books that tell you the world is 6,000 years old, and yet you read evolution and you read, quantum physics, and you find out that no, that's not true. So, what do they have for people like us? So I kind of wanted to deal with that, but instead of writing some academic stuffy manifesto that nobody's going to read, right. I said, let me try to fit this into a story, and let me fit it into something that would be accessible for people who are interested in something like that.
So what kind of book? How would we know that we might enjoy finding a light in a room with no walls? Is this on the more sort of serious philosophical? Is there a comedic bent? Is there, kind of describe for us, how would we know if this is a book for us?
It's everything. I mean, it's got some really dark sides, but it's got some real light fun sides. There's some humor. Like, some of my characters are really funny. I mean, what would life be? How could you write a realistic story without humor? You know what I mean? So, there's a lot of domestic things that are happening, relationships, and it's a really fun book. And there's this whole philosophical component to it, but it's a comedy and it's a tragedy. It's all of those things. So, I think, like, if I had to describe my style as an author, I'm probably like a mosh of like Hemingway, Dostoevsky, and Bukowski.
There we go. If you like any of those three.
I went for the cleanliness of Hemingway. Like, I really like clean prose. Mm-hmm. But Dostoevsky has these like amazing psychological analysis of his characters, and I really love getting into the heads of my characters. That was a really fun thing for me. Like, there were scenes I wrote in this story where I actually burst into tears in the middle of them. Like it was just something so real that what was happening for me, and I'm like, I can't believe I just wrote that. Yeah. So yeah, it's everything. But I don't think the story would be compelling or if it didn't have a lot of everything to it. So if you like Italy, if you like food, if you like, people talking about wine and eating together and relationships, there's love. There's a really nice relationship between two characters that's kind of based on when my wife and I met, because we met. I was in Italy for 3 months in 2003, and I went over there to try to convince her to marry me. It took a little time, but it worked. And my experiences with her are wrapped up in this also.
That's amazing. So I just want to let you guys know, if you're watching this with us, you can actually grab a free copy today. So the book is launching, and so we've got the Kindle version out as a free promotion right now today. You can go to paperravenbooks.com/findingalight. It'll take you straight over to Amazon. You can get that free copy. You can dive in and see if this is a book for you. A little bit of philosophy, a little bit of man's search for meaning, a little bit of Jersey, a little Italy, and some relationships and funny moments all wrapped up in together. And Matteo, I'd love to know, like, from your experience as an author, what was it now an author, right? So what was it like to write this book? Can you give us a little bit of kind of the story behind the story?
You know, I had the idea for this story, and I know it sounds like a cliche. I was in the shower,
Perfect.
and like one of those moments that happen in a split second, and this huge thing just opens up in your head. And I got the idea to say, hey, I would love to deal with the agnostic perspective through a narrative story about a character who undergoes a tragedy and has to deal with his life. And it hit me like that, and then I just started, and the first draft was so cathartic, and it was a really like additive process. Like uh, my first draft was for me, and I deliberately over described things. Like my first draft was over 200,000 words. and
Wow.
and I said, I am not worrying about structure.
Yeah.
I am not going to worry about anything. I don't care about redundancy. I don't care about any of it. I'm just going to get every single detail out of my head, and I'm going to over describe things for my sake, because through that process, it helps me as the author visualize the characters and the space and everything. So I finally got to the end, and then I began a reductive process, which was a whole different thing. It just, like, that part of the process was just cut, note, consolidate. It was much more rational and analytical. And with my experience with writing music, because I've published a lot of music also, um, your work is done not when you like everything; it's when you don't dislike anything.
Mm.
When I could finally get through the story and not hate anything, and be like, okay, this works for me now. And so the reductive process was really something, because I had it all there. I just had to tie the story together. And there was only one scene that I wrote after the fact, where there was one part of the book where Mark goes to a church and meets a priest, and I felt like as I was reading the story, I'm like, I need something in the middle here. So I just wrote the scene, and I wrote it in like an hour and a half,
Mhm.
and boom, there it was. And and as for how the book was written, like I could sit down and vomit out 10,000 words in one sitting, and
Wow.
then not write for a week. Like it's strange. Like my creative process is like I let things percolate and ferment in my head, and then all of a sudden this switch goes off, and I just blah, everything comes out, and then more comes, and that's how it goes. I mean, it took me a couple of years to write the first draft, but I'd probably say total time I wrote the book in a few months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
So
you were to take all those writing sessions and sort of put it
yes,
together, it'd be
that's exactly right. The process was really something. It was really the editing process was phenomenal. I loved it. I really loved. I worked with a great editor, a young lady by the name of Mariah Hampstead, and we spent the better part of a year just going through this thing, and hashing it out. And finally we wound up with something that worked, and getting 200,000 words down to 84K and change was no small feat.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually found I even cut entire chapters that I really liked,
Mm.
because there was too much foreshadowing. I gave away things that I didn't want to give away.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get to a point where, because your first draft is for you,
Yeah.
everything after that's for the reader. And you have to be able to read the story from the reader's perspective, because they're the ones who are going to enjoy this. Like, it's done for me. It's not mine anymore. It's there. It belongs to whoever reads the story. They own this story now, because it's not about me anymore. And I think that when you touch on universals like that, and you have that kind of compassion for your readers, you have the chance to connect with them.
Mm.
Because people, I think so many people are looking for a breadcrumb trail to help us deal with the unbearable mundanacity of existence. Like, we're all looking for that. I've read a number of books that have really, like, let me breathe. So I kind of hoped I could kind of contribute to that.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Well, you guys, if you are hooked already, good news is you can grab a free copy right now today. Just go to paperravenbooks.com/finding a light, and you can grab a copy, dive in, or if you need to wait a couple days till the weekend, go ahead and get it now while it's free, and then you'll have it queued up and ready for you on the weekend. Mateo, any last words for your readers out there?
Um, don't expect my character to have some aha moment. That's not how this plays out. Okay. Um, it's not easy to be okay with inconclusive results. You're gonna hate me towards the end of the book. You'll see. But I think a good story should take you through a roller coaster ride. And my book's going to make you laugh. It's going to break your heart. One of the characters I didn't mention is the therapist, Dr. Rosalino, who is really fascinating, and she's going to go head to head with my character, and they're going to uncover a lot of stuff. And I think it's a lot of stuff that a lot of us have in common. So I think people are going to identify with the characters in this story, and I think maybe that's the point of a good one.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Thank you, Mateo, for taking some time to tell us about finding a light in a room with no walls. We're so excited to launch this book with you, and you guys go grab a copy, paperhavenbooks.com/finding a light. Mateo, thank you. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you, Morgan. It was nice to speak with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye.